Hi everyone! We're here today to show you how to do a wrap and turn short row. This is at the request of a knitter, a subscriber here on our channel, and we are excited to be able to answer this question for them. So there are a lot of different types of short rows. Today we are strictly doing the wrap and turn. We'll do other videos on other types of short rows at a later date. So short rows are used to add more fabric to one section as opposed to another section. Sometimes it's for the dart at a bust line. Sometimes it's to give a square bag some shaping at the bottom and make it more shell-like. Things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and just knit a few stitches in here. Okay, so to do the wrap and turn from a knit stitch, I'm going to bring my yarn to the front like I'm purling, so it comes between my needles to the front like I'm going to a purl stitch. Insert my right needle into the next stitch purlwise and slip it off the left needle without working it. My yarn now comes to the back of my work. You can see here that it looks like it's wrapping around the stitch. It looks like it's strangling it almost. I'm then going to move the stitch from my right needle back to my left, turn my work, and do my next row. So I did my wrap and turn kind of close to the end of the row so you wouldn't have to watch me knit an entire row. Okay, so on this row I have to do what's called hiding the wraps. That means just kind of getting rid of that little bump. Can you see that there? That's the wrap from the wrap and turn. We don't want that to show because if I continue on it would really be more obvious than it is right now. So if you've forgotten where your wraps are, you can look at the gap. Do you see the gap between the stitches on my needle there? That it's always the stitch before the gap. So sometimes you might be doing this and you might have 3 or 4 or 5 gaps. The other thing you can do is when you do the wrap and turn, slip your stitch from the left needle to the right needle, put a locking stitch marker on the left needle. And then as you continue, when you come back through, you'll know the wrapped stitch is always the one just before a marker. That's up to you. I find looking at the gaps is enough. Other people have told me that they need to put those markers in there. Whatever works for you. There's no right or wrong. It's all personal preference. Okay, so I'm knitting across to my stitch here. And here's my wrap. And I can see it looks like a funny little loop around my stitch. So to hide it on the knit side, I'm going to knit it with the stitch above it. So I'm going to go up into the wrap and then into the stitch at the same time, wrap it knitwise, and then withdraw through both. And I'll take this right off the needle. But I'm not going to do that. I want to show you something else. So one of the most common problems people have when they do this is that they can't pull their right needle through both stitches. So they go in like so, the right way, up through the wrap and then into the stitch, wrap it, and then when they withdraw, they only get the stitch from the left needle. See that? There's the wrap. Go ahead and take that stitch off, and then take the wrap and bind it off like it's a stitch. That's all. Nice and easy. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and knit to the end of the row real quick here. And then we're going to show you how to do a wrap and turn on the purl side, as well as how to hide your wraps on the purl side. Okay, so just like on the knit side, I'm just going to purl a few stitches here. Sorry about that. That would be one of our dogs who has been very vocal as we've been filming this evening. Okay, so I'm to the point where I want to wrap a stitch. I'm going to leave my yarn right here, insert my right needle into the next stitch purlwise, and slip it off without working it. Bring my yarn to the back, and then slip that same stitch back to the left needle. Bring my yarn to the front, turn my work, and I'm in place to go ahead and start knitting. I knit my next row. Okay, so hiding the wraps on the purl side is just a little bit different. It's a little bit more complicated, but we're going to get you through it. Don't worry. Okay, same thing goes. I find my gap right here. It's pretty obvious. I think you can see that well. It's hard to see the wrap on the purl side. It's not as obvious. So you look for the gap, and remember it's a stitch before. You can even count how many you have to do. 2, 4, 5 for me. So I'm just going to purl 5 stitches. That'll get me to that wrapped stitch. Okay. So this one, I always just flip my work toward me so I can see the right side. And I take my right needle and go up or toward me underneath that wrap. So from the bottom of the piece toward the needle, under that wrap, flip it back and lift the wrap up onto the needle. You want to make sure you bring the wrap past the stitch that's on the needle. So it's really important. Use your finger. See, mine doesn't want to go. Of course it doesn't. That's because we're filming. If I wasn't filming, it would be fine. So you get it past the stitch. You want the stitch toward the end of the needle. That just helps hide the wrap better. And then I'm going to go ahead and just purl those two together, the stitch and the wrap. Purl them together. This big old loop, that's my wrap. That's just being hidden. It's going to be just fine. I'll show you in just a second here. Okay. You don't need to see me do the entire row. So here's where I did the short row on the knit side. I can see it just because I can see an extra little strand in there. That's from hiding the wrap. And then on the purl side, I did it, well, it was 5 stitches in, so I did it right here. You can't even tell. So that is a wrap and turn short row. If you like us, make sure you like the video, subscribe so you get notifications of new videos coming up, and leave us a comment. Thanks everybody. Happy knitting.